In a world where history is often rewritten by the victors, a shocking revelation has come to light, one so profound that it threatens to shake the very foundations of religious, academic, and political institutions. Bill Gates, the billionaire tech mogul known for revolutionizing the digital age, has stumbled upon something far beyond the realm of technology. His latest discovery has nothing to do with software or artificial intelligence, but instead reveals an ancient struggle buried deep within the folds of time. Through extensive research into historical archives and long-suppressed documents, Gates has uncovered what he calls the greatest deception of all time, a systematic effort to erase the true identity of Black Israelites. This revelation has sparked both awe and outrage among scholars, religious leaders, and truth-seekers alike. But how did Gates, a man of science and technology, find himself caught in a controversy so explosive that some are already calling it forbidden knowledge? What he uncovered is not just a historical oversight, but a sinister, well-orchestrated plan, a scheme so insidious that it could only be described as the devil's work. This is the untold story of how Black Israelites, the true descendants of biblical tribes, were deliberately targeted, enslaved, and silenced. Gates's investigation exposes the hidden forces behind this erasure, forces that have operated from the shadows for centuries. The question is, are we ready to confront the truth? If you believe history should not be rewritten to serve those in power, then join the conversation. Subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and share your thoughts. The truth must be heard. Let's dive in. History is not just a record of past events. It is a battlefield of narratives shaped by the victors to maintain their dominance. Bill Gates, typically known for his contributions to technology and philanthropy, unexpectedly found himself drawn into this historical conflict after encountering obscure biblical texts, long-buried historical records, and undeniable patterns of systemic oppression. What began as a passing curiosity quickly turned into a full-scale investigation. Gates uncovered what appeared to be a deliberate effort to suppress, distort, and erase the true identity of Black Israelites. His research suggested that history had been weaponized, not simply as a means of education, but as a tool for manipulation and control. Black Israelites, whose roots trace back to ancient biblical times, have had their story either ignored or ridiculed by mainstream academia and religious institutions. The deeper Gates looked, the clearer it became that their identity had been systematically erased, whether through direct censorship, misinformation, or the slow erosion of cultural memory. Many questions arose. If these people were truly the descendants of biblical Israelites, why was their lineage erased from mainstream discourse? Why were they portrayed as outsiders in religious spaces that should have been their own? More importantly, why did powerful entities seem determined to keep this knowledge hidden? The answers to these questions, Gates discovered, were deeply tied to one of history's darkest chapters, the transatlantic slave trade. The transatlantic slave trade remains one of the most horrifying and dehumanizing atrocities in human history. While it is often framed as a tragic consequence of European economic expansion, Gates's findings pointed to something even more insidious, a hidden agenda that went beyond economics. His research led him to biblical prophecy, particularly Deuteronomy 28:68, which speaks of a people who would be enslaved, scattered, and subjected to generations of suffering. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again, with ships, by the way, whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies, for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you." Many scholars and theologians have debated the meaning of this passage, but Gates found striking parallels between these biblical warnings and the fate of the millions of Africans who were forcibly taken from their homeland and transported to the Americas. Could it be that the enslaved Africans were not merely victims of colonial greed, but rather targets of a deeper, more calculated spiritual war? One of Gates' most troubling discoveries was the role of religious institutions in the transatlantic slave trade. He found evidence that European and American churches not only justified slavery, but actively provided theological arguments to support it. Early slave traders were taught that the people they captured and sold were cursed, making them undeserving of full humanity. These religious justifications allowed for the systematic erasure of their history, cultural practices, and most importantly, their spiritual lineage. Names were stripped away, families were torn apart, native languages were forbidden. By severing these people from their identity, the slavers were not just committing acts of physical bondage, they were engaging in psychological warfare. The goal was not only to enslave their bodies, but to enslave their minds, ensuring they never rediscovered who they truly were. The question remains, will we continue to accept the history we've been given, or will we seek out the truth for ourselves? Bill Gates' investigation led him to lesser-known historical records indicating that some African tribes, forcibly taken into slavery, had already been practicing customs strikingly similar to those of ancient Israel. From dietary laws to circumcision practices and even Sabbath observance, these enslaved peoples bore a remarkable resemblance to the Israelites described in the Old Testament. But if these connections were known, why were they buried beneath centuries of distortion and silence? Gates' research led him to a troubling realization. Misinformation about Black Israelites did not end with history books. It extended into modern times, perpetuated through mass media, educational institutions, and religious authorities. The systematic targeting of Black Israelites was not just a historical phenomenon. It was an ongoing effort. For every historian or scholar who attempted to bring this information to light, there seemed to be a counter-effort to discredit, marginalize, or silence them. In modern academia, discussions about the true identity of Black Israelites were often met with skepticism, dismissal, or outright censorship. Religious institutions, too, either remained silent or actively opposed any movement that sought to reclaim this lost heritage. This pattern of suppression, Gates found, was not accidental. It was intentional. It was a form of social engineering, designed to ensure that an entire group of people remained disconnected from their origins. After all, if a people forget who they are, they also forget their divine purpose. They lose their sense of unity, their moral foundation, and their drive to reclaim their rightful place in history. The psychological impact of this deception has been profound. Many Black individuals today are unaware of their potential connection to biblical prophecy. They have been led to adopt identities that bear little resemblance to their true heritage, believing themselves to be perpetual outsiders rather than inheritors of a grand and sacred lineage. This loss of identity has, in turn, fueled cycles of disenfranchisement, poverty, and social instability, conditions that serve to reinforce the very systems that seek to keep them oppressed. But was this erasure of identity intentional? Gates uncovered troubling patterns suggesting that powerful figures were working behind the scenes to keep knowledge of the Black Israelites obscured. From Hollywood films that mock or misrepresent biblical history to news narratives that dismiss such claims as fringe conspiracy theories, there seemed to be a coordinated effort to shape public perception. Why would institutions, governments, and media outlets all work to suppress the historical and biblical significance of Black Israelites? The answer, Gates suspected, lay in the power of knowledge. If a people rediscover their true identity, they reclaim their strength. They find solidarity, purpose, and spiritual renewal. They become ungovernable, not in the sense of rebellion, but in the sense that they no longer accept the false narratives imposed upon them. Gates's investigation, though controversial, opened a door to a profound and unsettling reality. The systematic targeting of Black Israelites was not just about race, it was about power, history, and the control of spiritual destiny. If history is a battlefield, then those who control its narratives control the fate of entire civilizations. One of the most effective tools in this grand deception, Gates found, was religion, specifically the manipulation of biblical history and doctrine. He traced this practice back to early church councils, where powerful religious leaders decided which texts would be included or omitted from the biblical canon. These councils were not merely spiritual gatherings, they were political bodies, shaping how history would be recorded and taught for centuries. One of the most glaring examples of this manipulation, Gates noted, was the Europeanization of biblical figures in Western art, literature, and religious imagery. Figures such as Moses, King David, Solomon, even Jesus Christ himself, were depicted with European features, despite historical, anthropological, and geographical evidence overwhelmingly suggesting that they would have borne traits far removed from the pale-skinned depictions popularized during the Renaissance. Despite immense backlash, Gates has remained steadfast in his findings. History is uncomfortable, but truth must prevail. His argument is simple. People deserve to know who they are. Without an accurate understanding of history, societies will continue to build upon falsehoods, perpetuating cycles of ignorance and oppression. Gates has emphasized that his goal is not to dismantle religions or delegitimize any group's historical claims. Rather, he believes that acknowledging the true identity of the Black Israelites is a necessary step toward correcting historical injustices. We cannot move forward as a society if we continue to deny people their rightful place in history. Interestingly, Gates has also pointed out that the backlash itself serves as evidence that he is on to something significant. If this were truly just a baseless conspiracy theory, no one would care. But the level of effort being put into discrediting this research tells you there is something deeper at play. The controversy surrounding Gates's findings is not just about historical accuracy. It is about power, identity, and the control of knowledge. If the true history of the Black Israelites were widely accepted, it would challenge deeply embedded social, religious, and political structures, force educational institutions to revise their curricula, compel religious organizations to confront their role in distorting history. The realization of this truth could spark a cultural and spiritual awakening, fundamentally altering how Black people perceive themselves and their role in the world. But will this truth be allowed to surface, or will it continue to be suppressed under the weight of political, religious, and economic interests? Gates' findings have opened a door that some would rather keep closed. Yet, as history has shown, truth has a way of resurfacing, no matter how deeply it has been buried. The battle for truth is far from over.